All right, so today, beginning of a new year, first interview of the year is going to be Hannah Kelly. So we're glad to have her here today, and I'm grateful she made time. I've been wanting to interview her for a long time to learn all about her roots in Ireland and joining the church and the church going up there. So we'll get started. So Hannah, just to start, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you grew up, since I already kind of said, but what it was like growing up in Ireland, what you remember as a little girl and your family when you were younger, etc.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to do this. It's something that I've hesitated doing for a very long time.
I know, so I'm very grateful.
I grew up in Ireland, as you said. I was actually born in England. Both my parents became reacquainted in England. They both went there for work. And at the age of, when I was 2.5, they made their way back home to Ireland.
Okay, wait. So pause right there. I got to ask. So are you technically British or are you Irish or both?
I'm actually both.
Okay. So you got like a triple citizenship?
I have triple citizenship and I claim it all. So I was born very close to the London Temple, Sutton, Surrey, and I grew up in the southwest of Ireland, Limerick. I'm one of 15 children. I'm the second oldest, the oldest girl, and I have a brother that's 10 months older than I am.
Oh, wow.
And out of the 15 children, 10 of us have served missions throughout the world.
Wow.
My mom was a convert first. My mom was the first to join.
What are your parents' names?
Eileen Kelly, Eileen White was her maiden name, and Thomas Kelly.
Okay.
And so
she joined the church
when I was 7 years old.
Okay.
And so 1960. And then my father was 3 years later. And it was a real challenge for my father to change his faith. When he told his father, he told him that he would have rather have heard that he had killed a man as opposed to be disloyal to the faith that he was brought up in. And he was told to never tell his mother, that it would break her heart. And it broke my father's heart to do this, to hurt his father so much.
How did they get introduced to the church in Ireland?
That's a very good question. Missionaries knocked on the door and my mother answered. And she sent them away, like many Irish people did. The church was seen as a cult. Even as a young child, I was aware of that. And when she walked up the steps of the staircase, she heard a voice that said, "I sent you teachers, and you didn't listen." And missionaries knocked on the door again several months later, and she left them in, but on conditions. She told them that she was having enough trouble with her own church, and she was very faithful. I remember seeing pages and pages with my mother's handwriting. Her desire to know and understand the Bible. She started handwriting it, writing it out, and that was her way of showing to the Lord. Her commitment to Him and her desire to know and understand His truth. mother learned to read when I was 11 or 12.
Wow.
But if you ever saw her handwriting, it was beautiful. My mother became a master teacher. She could teach anyone, from a young child in primary to an individual with a high intellect. I remember I was not a member of the church. I was not. And she came home with a CTR manual. She'd been given the calling of a teacher. And she shared with me that the church expects you to be involved and to be educated and to be very willing to share and teach what you know. My father read the lesson to my mom, and my mom taught the lesson.
Wow.
So the missionaries, when they knocked on the door a second time, she told them they could only read from the Bible. And they did that for 4 months.
Good for them.
Yeah. And then, I remember one missionary, when he returned home from his mission, he sent my mother a very small briefcase, and there must have been at least 30 audio tapes where he read the Book of Mormon on.
What a sweet guy.
Yeah, he'd started it during his mission. And I remember hearing those being played at home. And this was before the church actually produced them,
Right.
I remember the time that my father was asked by a missionary why he wasn't a member of the church, why he wasn't baptized. And my father's response was, I don't know. That's a very good question. And he challenged him to consider being baptized. And he told him that he would let him know next week. And I can distinctly remember my mom having everything prepared, and she was very quiet, but she was very busy, and it was in the evening and the missionaries were to come, and they were really, they could have knocked at the door any minute, and lo and behold, my younger brother Tommy put a pound of butter in the carpet on the front step right by the front door in the hallway. And something like that could really, make my father feel very anxious and uncomfortable.
Sure.
And I sensed a tremendous nervousness. And my mom hadn't talked to me about that the missionaries were coming, and my dad hadn't said anything either, but I knew how important that night was. And we were all upstairs, the kids, my siblings and I. And I took the responsibility of keeping everybody quiet.
Because you're the oldest
One
daughter.
of the older ones, yeah. Even though I wasn't asked. But I had the opportunity to go to church once. One time, my mom and I walked to church one Sunday morning. It's like a 2.5 mile walk. And we went to, it was sacrament meeting then, it was early morning service, and I remember just walking down into this basement. It was not nice. It was a derelict building. I even felt that a young child. And I walk in, and as I walk in, we're late. I recognise we're late. The meeting has already started. And I heard the words, "This is true." And I answered, "I know." And I sincerely did know. But I had nothing explained to me. I had no one ever tell me anything about the teachings of the church. But I was very blessed and very fortunate to always believe in God. And I always communicated to him in my mind, in my heart. And at times I would kneel and I would pray aloud. But I basically spoke to him all the time, just like a conversation with you. I always spoke with the Lord that way. I always took my questions to him. And I share that because I didn't know anybody in the room, only my mother. And I recognized that the Lord was with me. And he knew the desire I had to follow him and his teachings from a very young age.
Were you baptized when you were 8 or a little later?
I was baptized when I was 10, and it was 6 months after the date that my father was baptized.
Did the kids all wait until after Dad was baptized?
The older 3 were of age, and it was the third child, my sister Ellen, that had the courage to one day speak to my dad. And I happened to be right there, which I'm grateful for. And she just said, "Was it good that Mom was baptized?" And he said, "Yes," very assertive. "Was it good that you were baptized?" And he smiled. And he said, "Yes." And then she said, "Why wouldn't it be good for us to be baptized?" And he smiled. He didn't answer. But we had the missionary lessons, the 3 of us. I can distinctly remember Michael, myself, and Ellen in the front room with the missionaries. And we were taught all the lessons. My father was concerned. Michael was making his confirmation at that time. It was very close to it. I would have been the following year, and we were taught the lessons. We were baptized December 23rd.
Oh, that's a great memory.
And it was intentional, the date that we selected. It was the date that Joseph Smith's birthday.
Right.
I felt, when I learned of the Joseph Smith story, I believed it. I had a similar experience with, I believed in the Bible. I had knowledge of the Bible. I believed in the power of prayer. I had experienced answers to prayer as young as I was. And when I learned of Joseph going to the woods to pray, to know which church to join, that was a prayer I had. God the Father and Jesus Christ did not appear to me but I was given a very strong witness that I gained a knowledge of the truthfulness of the Lord's teachings within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that has remained strong with me my entire life. Today I feel blessed, greatly blessed, for the way I lived my life as a young person. Regular things of just doing the small and simple things of being prayerful, always attending church, being conscious and mindful of my thoughts as I went about my day-to-day tasks. I was very conscious of my role in my family.
What was it like growing up in Ireland? Like, what did you do for fun, or as a little girl, what are some of your memories just at the village town?
I just remember it was all about the family. It wasn't about going out and having, playing a game of sports or whatever. I walked everywhere. So
how big was your town?
There was a population of 50,000.
Okay.
High school was, I passed the church. The church building for them was not built yet, but when I started high school, they got planning permission for the church building, and I would walk by it every day and see how it was going up. And my teachers were Jesuit priests, and of course I was being asked a lot of questions as that building was becoming a more prominent feature. And the church and my high school were literally just like 5 minutes away. It was the opposite side of the road, and this is 5 minutes away walking.
Right.
And so I was very fortunate to be able to do seminary. It was early morning, and it was home study. I would get up and I would read.
On your own?
On my own.
Wow.
And my brother could do a week's work, and I would only get 1 day done.
That actually makes sense.
So fast.
Yeah, the boys are going to crank through it. The women are going to be more intentional.
Oh my gosh, I was like, and I think he got on a high because of how quick he could do it. And we were not always in the same room or anything, but I was trying to understand every word, everything about it.
I can see that. What subjects did you enjoy learning in school?
I loved biology. I loved studying the human anatomy. I liked math. I liked it all, but those subjects were easier for me.
Did you tend to hang out with your family, or did you hang out with friends as well during high school?
In high school, I seemed to be liked by all, and I mainly hung out with 2 other girls. But a lot of my classes, they were just guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an incident in school once where a guy was trying to use my eraser, and I was doing technical drawing, mechanical drawing, I think is what you would call it. Anyway, something got into me where I said no, and he grabbed it, and I corrected him, and he swore at me. And that was very seldom that ever happened, that somebody would actually look me right in the eye and swear. And the teacher caught him, and he corrected him immediately, and he goes, "Why? 'Cause she's a girl?" And he said yes, straight up. And so he went to use it again, and he said please this time, and he got it. But, I had a few incidents like that all through my life. I remember the time where I was at a party, and somebody that one of the guys that was there at the party, actually a lot of the kids there did not know me at all, because it was a new girl at school who I was friendly with, who asked me would I come to her birthday, and I got to stay the night at her place, which I did. And I didn't know who this young man was, but he wanted me to smoke. And I had 2 buck teeth, 2 large front teeth, and I remember him pushing the cigarette into my mouth, but my teeth clenched, he couldn't get it in. And I remember just, it became a scene in the party of why I wouldn't smoke. And I shared the religious belief, and I also shared that I had no desire to. And I learned later that that was the last day that that young man smoked himself.
Wow. What a great example.
Yes, but at the time I was prepared to be jeered and mocked and ridiculed, and it didn't happen. And I found throughout my life, if you live what you believe, you're respected. I do apologize. There is so much emotion in me. And it's all got to do with my testimony. I treasure it.
What did you do after high school?
After high school, I started working. I was actually working part-time when I went to high school, and I started working like a nurse's aide in a hospital. And I went to, straight after high school, I studied esthetician. And and I did some at night as well. I studied at night, and then I started a full-time job working as a nurse's aide, and I continued doing night school as well. So I did a combination of both. And then I served a mission I graduated, and I served a mission in Montana. And that's where I met my husband, David Levitt, and then...
Was he a missionary at the time?
He was a missionary in Montana as well. And
all right, so which has better weather, Montana or Ireland?
Well, Ireland doesn't have the snow that Montana has.
Right.
Although this morning everybody woke up to a blanket of snow.
Okay.
So, global changing or whatever. Anyway, Montana's weather was much better. Although I had a dreadful time with mosquitoes when I went there first. Just a real allergic reaction, swelling everywhere. I mean, I had to sit in ice cold bathtub of water to just reduce the swelling. And it was a neighbour that really helped me, that he worked with horses, training horses. And so I put this spray on that they put on. Actually, I coated it on. It wasn't a spray bottle. And that did the trick, thankfully. And so I loved my mission, absolutely loved it. We had the worst winter in '89, and there was a national disaster declared. I remember driving the mission car, and I had just taken it off, the heater off, and I'm driving to the bishop's house, and it's at least 20-30 minute drive, and seeing the window screen go icy as I was driving, and the car it was still driving, but it was driving slower, not because of my foot on the pedal. And I had enough sense to start looking where I could park the car. I knew it was going to come to a stop as I was driving it. It was that cold, and the snow was everywhere. And I could see a house, and I indicated to my neighbour, my companion, we better go over there. And we had a cell phone, believe it or not, in '89 or
Really?
Yeah, I was able to, or else we called within the place.
Wow.
I can't remember which, but I called the bishop and I just said, listen, the car, I've parked at the side of the road, but the car stopped driving. And so, and I let him know that we knocked on a door and we're there, and he came and got us. But he assumed I had crashed the car for whatever reason, which I hadn't. But I was a new driver. I learned to drive while I was on my mission.
On the right side of the road.
Yes, that's how I learned to drive. And there was a sheriff in my ward, and I just said, hey, my trainer, I was just out in the mission field, and I said, my trainer has been sick for 2 weeks, and I've been, struggling trying to get companions to go out and work, and to have somebody that can drive, has a car, and go out with me. So I said, would you mind just taking me out in the car for a drive and give me an indication how many lessons will I need and what will I need to do and where will I need to go? And unbelievably, he said, yeah. And I just drove, and he took me to Parallel Park. He told me to do a 3-point turn. I just did exactly what he told me to do. And I said, okay, so can you tell me just straight up how long, what do I need to do to learn to drive? And he goes, oh, you can take the test.
Just like that.
He told me you can just go take the test. I was amazed. Because the only experience I ever had was behind the wheel with my dad. And it was a clutch.
Sure.
And, I was just in a car parking lot. I mean, I was never anywhere else. And I never went very far with him or ever any kind of speed. And so I was amazed. I got a driver's license, and I was amazed that my mission president had me be the primary driver, my misfortunate companion, especially when the snow came in. And she was so experienced, and she was having such a hard time with her mission president because Sister Kelly was the primary driver. But it was just to give me the experience.
I'm sure.
That's all. Anyway.
Probably why the president did it.
Mm-hmm.
Share with us, if you don't mind, maybe a favorite teaching experience or somebody that you taught from your mission that stands out.
Okay, there was a lot of experiences, but I do, and I just share this humbly, I remember asking Heavenly Father to bless me to be able to teach some young children to be brought into the church like I was. I asked for an elderly man or an elderly woman. I was very specific who I would like to teach. And I remember, and I would pray in the most unusual places. Just as soon as I recognized that I would like that, and I could, the Lord blessed me. He blessed me to be able to recognize those people that He specifically had prepared for me to share. There was one lady that stuck out. Her name was Sister Hen. And the strange thing about that is, and I'll just tell you, I could tell you a very long story, but a very short version of it is, we did a spiritual tract. We prayed to know where we would go knocking on doors. And we went right to the perimeter of our area. So much so that the elders challenged us. They thought it was their area. And I went with my companion, knocked on the door, and I had a lady shouting through the door. Now, it's very hard to keep the spirit and shout back. And it was my door approach to say, we're representatives of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, here to share a message with you today. And to have that coherent. And she shouts to come in, and we go in, and it's the very first door we knock on. And we sit down and say who we are. And she reminded me a little bit, but not at first, but it came to me. It was my mother's mother. And she had a stern way about her. I should have been scared of her, but I wasn't. Or I didn't want her to see that I was a little bit apprehensive. And I happened to glance and see Mormon doctrine on her end table.
No way.
And she was not baptized. She was not a member. But I later learned that she influenced her children to be baptized. All of them. And I learned that her daughter lived right next door to her. And her daughter, we went down after our discussion with her mother. And she said, she apologized. She said that she had been praying for missionaries for her mother.
Mm.
But it was elders she was considering, not sisters. And anyway, we let her know that we had an appointment to return. And my companion was sick. And so I needed a companion. And her granddaughter came with me. And we went up. And in the mission, we had to challenge on the second time that we met. Not the second discussion. It was the second time we met the person. We, as we said, their name. I would like you to pray with me. I would like you to pray. And I'm falling on my knees as I'm saying this. For you to be ready to be baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints come January 15th. And they would say sometimes things like, why do I have to pray? And I would say, because it's for you to know that you can be ready to be baptized on that date. And they would then go on their knees because I was on mine already, and I would share with them that at the end of their prayer that I would remain silent so that they could listen for their answer. And when they broke the silence, I would then engage. And so her answer was no, and so I began to talk to her, and it boiled down to that she didn't feel worthy to be baptized. Mm. And the parable of the 99 sheep and the one lost sheep was the answer that Peggy accepted and recognized. And she was a very heavy-set lady. She was on oxygen, and I couldn't get any clothing for her for baptism. And I prayed really hard to find clothes, and I found it was the strangest of things, but she didn't want to be baptized in a dress. And so we got white slacks, and I found, it took a long time, but I found a white sweatshirt that had to be washed. Mm. And in the store, and I bought it, but it needed to be washed. And I remember going to the baptism and having the window open and having it outside stretched with my hands the entire hour drive for the baptism.
Trying to dry it?
Trying to dry it.
That's funny.
And she's on oxygen, so I couldn't let her get cold or sick,
Right, that's funny.
Anyway, I just, it never happened to me before, but her son and her son-in-law went into the font. And it was the bishop who went forward and said to not have her be baptized the standard way of being, her back down into the water, but to be brought forward and down. And
Make it easier. That's interesting.
It was a great experience, and
Aren't missions amazing? Just the crazy experiences that happen with 19, 20, 21-year-old kids.
yeah, absolutely. And what we're entrusted with is
It's
incredible. So that was one baptism, and then a real quick one was, and I was really grateful for this experience. It was an elderly man. He'd been a sergeant in the war, and I was actually training, and it was the very first day. My companion was from New York. She was a greenie. It was the very first door we knocked on. And I knock on the door, and we're thought to be aggressive. Our mission president, he asked us to take a step forward when we begin to speak, as though we're presuming we're going to be invited in. And so I take my step and I say who we are, and may we come in and share a message with you. And he's taken back a little bit, and he lets us come in. He's hard of hearing, and so I feel like I'm shouting. My companion is petrified. She literally is frozen. And in every way, just in every way. And he's very challenging. And I lead the discussion, and I soft challenge, because in our mission we were required to soft challenge, and the soft challenge was, when you come to know these things are true for yourself, would you be willing to be baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And you just stay quiet. You let him answer that. And so he smirked, and he said yes. And so, long story short, all I could remember is that I called the bishop, and I tell him, this is who we met, this is who we spoke with, and there's something now I can't remember with the passage of time very clearly, but I'm indicating to him that, I know I had the second visit, and he says to me, what's special about that day? And I just look him right back in the eye, as though I'm as assertive as can be and as confident as can be. I said, that's the day you're going to be baptized. And so I call and I talk to the bishop, and I ask the bishop, I call the bishop, and the bishop has been over there, or something has transpired. The bishop asks me, can he be baptized earlier? Not later, earlier, which threw me for a loop. And I must have become very formal. I'm like, Bishop, I'm sorry, but he has not been to church yet, and it's required to be to church one Sunday. And I called the mission president, and I got approval, but I was told not to tell anybody.
Now you've told everybody.
Oh yeah, but I wasn't to tell him before the fact.
Yeah.
And special approval. I learned from the bishop that his wife had been a member of the church for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
This gets better. The bishop was his home teacher.
No way.
Faithful for 40 years.
You didn't know
going to that
yeah.
home. His wife had passed on, and this is why he was asking, could he be? And the baptism went ahead, and when he came out of the water, he was so complimentary to my companion and I.
That's sweet.
I'll never forget that baptism. And then his first calling that he was given, He was called to teach the 17-year-olds, the Sunday school 17-year-olds. That'll tell you his demeanour. He was a very tall man. He had a real strong presence.
Thrown right in the fire.
Oh, yes, that my greenie to, be out in the field, to have a baptism within 2 weeks.
That's cool.
And she experienced, that was the first door she knocked on. And you can imagine how many people were praying for her and her family. And here, the very first door she has a baptism from it. But we knocked on doors for 8 hours after that, and not one door was opened.
Of course.
Not one. And, I was somewhat troubled, but then I caught myself on. And my humour came in, and I said to my companion, I've realised why not even one door was opened for the remainder of the day, the balance of the day. And we're very faithful. Everybody heard the discussion, that first discussion. Everybody heard it because I had to speak so loud for his hearing. But anyway,
that's funny.
The Lord really blessed me to be able to. One thing that touched me was somebody asking me to teach them how to pray. Something I had taken for granted my whole life.
Right. That must have been special.
Cherished
learning
moment.
from you how to pray would be a unique experience.
Well, as the last 2 years have been very challenging, actually, since 2020. And life and experiences of life, you pray differently.
True.
And I can attest that our experiences, our challenges, they are prescriptions for growth. Individual, personalized prescriptions for growth. And I recall how one significant time when my husband left first, as I walked in the door to an empty house, I heard the words, "This is to keep you close to me." And I didn't even know what was in front of me. I have doubted myself from time to time, wondering sometimes if what I feel is just feelings within me. And I've gone to the temple and I've instructed the Lord to communicate to me through the scriptures, through his written word. And I've been able to consecutively open the scriptures multiple times and have an unfamiliar verse of scripture speak to me. I'll give an example of one. Section 100, where the Lord answered a prayer where that he was mindful of my family and he would do with them as he saw fit. In verse 1 of section 100. And then I believe in verse 3, he would open an effectual door. When I read those verses, I was able to be reminded how much the Lord knows us individually, how mindful he is of us, and to trust him, to trust the events as they were happening. And something changed in me. Reading verse 3, where the Lord promises that an effectual door will be opened, I began to look for that door, to recognize his answers even more closely, more specifically. And that has changed. That has changed how I pray. it's not what I'm saying during the prayer. It's how watchful I am after the prayer. And watching for the answer. Watching for what I think should be the answer to what the Lord has the answer for. And I remember thinking, especially as it occurred initially, did I miss the answer? Did I miss the effectual door? And I started backtracking who I had met, who I had spoken to, and came across what could have been possibly the answer to give me more confidence.
You know what's interesting listening to you is I can see throughout your life you've been very Christ-focused, Spirit-focused, and prayerful. It's really interesting, an interesting testimony. Let me ask you some quick hitter questions before everybody gets out and it's time to go. So I know you got some beautiful daughters. Tell us their names and who they are, what they're up to, just really quickly.
I have 4 daughters. Chanel is the oldest. She's 27. She's living in Saratoga Springs, Utah.
Okay.
I think I said that right. She's married to Jacob Johnson, and they have a beautiful boy. He's 18 months old. James is his name. The joy of my life. Absolute.
Cool. Who's next?
I have Diana.
Okay.
She's 26. A great example, a pure humanitarian.
That's beautiful.
I went to Africa with her. She spent time there, and her father and I went and visited her in Zambia, and she worked in an orphanage.
Wow.
She built them their first playground, and she also put in what I would call like dikes on either side of the road, but they were like inverted concrete, and for the runoff of the water to run down the road as opposed to flooding the area.
Yeah.
There was a little girl that was allergic to the water, and she would get like boils, and it would scar her skin. And they when the rains came, they sent a video showing Diana how it worked. And
oh, that's sweet. What a cool experience.
yeah. And then I have Caroline. Caroline is my 3rd daughter. I think she's the most Irish one. Caroline Grace Kelly Levitt is her full name, and she is a graduate in GIA, the Gemological Institute of America, along with her sister Lauren. Lauren's the youngest. They both graduated last year, and they work with their dad and in the business. They all did seminary. They grew up here, and
all have bright futures ahead of them in some form or fashion that we'll all figure out.
they've got to struggle. It's not so easy, but they're all determined. They're focused, and
That's cool. Let me ask you some quick hitters about you. So, with your free time, when you got free time, what do you like to do?
well, I started learning to play pickleball in 2020
Awesome.
during COVID, and I love it. I've had no background to any sports, and absolutely love it. The sisters were very Christ-like as I was learning to play, and I just any free time that I have, I like to do that. I love to walk. I love to hike. I love music. I do not have any confidence in singing, but I enjoy music tremendously. I get very emotional. Classical music, instrumental music. I love it all.
Favorite food?
I love food.
All food?
All food. I just
Even British
love-
food?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I love it all. I love being with people and eating food.
Okay.
Um,
Do you have a favorite restaurant in the area?
Favorite restaurant? Mel Floors. I enjoy
Okay.
going to. That's what comes to mind first. But I eat before I go, and I generally eat afterwards. The portions are so small that I'm always.
That's true. I went one time and I vowed I'll never go again
Yeah.
just because of that.
Yeah. But I like to. I like to cook a steak at home.
Nice.
I love mashed potatoes. It's my favorite, and carrots and
That's
broccoli. They would be favorites. Roast potatoes. My mother's the best cook ever. It wouldn't matter what restaurant I've ever gone into.
Mom's kitchen's your favorite.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say all of my siblings would
Agreed.
strongly agree.
That's
It's
cool.
an absolute treat to go home. And Mom still cooks at 80. And we have to go in shifts, though.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like,
With 50.
not all the families all at once. It would just be a family.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun to listen to you. Maybe is there a last thought, just a brief thought that you want to share about who Jesus is to you?
Yeah. He's very personable. He's been a real friend. A real constant. He's carried me a lot. And I look to him to be healed, to become whole. I'm so grateful for his sacrifice, giving his life, but not just giving his life, but the life he lived. The life he lived. And I'm so grateful for the life that I get to live because of him. I do not have to carry guilt. I can, because of him, I can always try to do better, start over. Because of him, I know that I can see all those who have passed on one day, that I look forward to the time of going back to my heavenly home, of being surrounded with those, my grandparents, who are very God-fearing people, good people. I look forward to just experiencing love with all those that I'm around.
Well, I can tell that he is a constant companion with you, and I really appreciate you taking time to share all about so many aspects of your life today. So thank you very, very much, Hannah.
Thank you. I'm gonna